Hopefully some people are getting into the Zoom with us. If you want to let us know where you're coming from, that'd be great. Let us know what the weather's like, if it's sunny, raining, blue sky, whatever it may be. We're all hopeful that we get a trip to the Nile at some point, or at least the weather similar to that would be nice in the UK at some point in the near future. Earlier we were also talking about some of your previous travel, where you've been, and also where you have to go for work, and China came up as a pretty exciting destination.
Yeah, absolutely. So privileged to have worked in a global manufacturing business in a few organisations. So it has enabled me to do some travel over the years. So lovely. And often, China, Europe and the Americas as well. So, looking to go to China shortly at the beginning of March.
A new factory's been built there recently.
Yeah, we've had a new factory. So, and we're running this huge people manager program across the business. So, going to do some face-to-face support and, so it'd be really great to see that site there.
Nice. Great. I'll get the chat open. I've got to make sure that I do my iPad work as well as being able to do that. But I think we'll make a start. A big welcome to everyone who's joined us online or who's going to be listening to this from a recording perspective. Welcome to Mind the Gap. It's our podcast series where we ultimately look to try and take on a topic that is relevant to the L&D space, but organisations more generally as a whole or in the kind of global environment. And we look to try and make sure that we bring a perspective to try and close gaps in knowledge, understanding, have a good discussion, open up questions, and obviously try and have fun along the way. And obviously we've got a number of you who've already helped us with that in terms of bringing some questions. Today I'm joined by Karen. Karen, I'll let you introduce yourself, but it's great to have you here with us today. Thank you for spending the time with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for inviting me. Yeah, so my name's Karen Hill. I'm the Learning and Culture Manager at Rotork PLC. So Rotork is a global manufacturing business, and I've been with them for 4 years. But I've also been in L&D for a lot of years. So I started my career in banking, moved into L&D with them. I've worked in the public sector in the NHS and in local government, and I've also and in education as well. So I've seen L&D from a number of lenses, but most recently my home's been in the private sector in manufacturing.
Yeah, well, it's brilliant to have you. And can you tell us a little bit about Rotork, kind of size of company, and a little bit about, obviously it's multi-geography and what it does, what they do?
Yeah. So Rotork is a global manufacturing engineering business, creates and manufactures actuators, which are an integral part of technology that supports the control and flow of either water, chemicals, etc. So global footprint, 3,500 employees globally across APAC, Europe, and the Americas. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Karen. And look, we'll be able to talk a bit more about your experience at Rotork as we get into the topics. As you know, prior to today, we asked a number of you to reach out with questions around our specific topic, the focus of the discussion today. We've got some time a little bit later to jump into those and really dig into them. Before we get into some of the main topic, we wanted just to start with a little bit of a warm-up and some quick-fire questions. It's something we like to do on Mind the Gap. So, wanted to start with favourite country to visit.
Oh, Italy.
Italy, brilliant. We've talked a lot about that, so we won't go into it. First job as a child.
The first job I did, I was 15 and I worked as a Saturday girl in a cake shop.
Oh, wow.
So it was brilliant, serving, and we actually used to box the cakes up and tie them with ribbon, and it was fabulous, yeah.
I thought that was a bit of a move back to that kind of presentation and a number of the bakeries that are out there.
Yeah.
Best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Keep it simple.
Nice. I like that one too. One thing that you can't live without, we'll finish on that one.
Coffee.
Does it feel?
Far too much coffee. I can probably have about 8 or 9 cups before 12 o'clock.
Well, look, hopefully you've had plenty of coffee to fuel the rest of the discussion. So, look, as you know, and obviously, Karen, you've agreed to engage in the topic for Mind the Gap today, is around how organisations can thrive in a rapidly evolving economy by investing in skills, learning, and performance. And so we shaped this topic because obviously it's incredibly relevant in terms of where L&D is, and we feel like there's a change in L&D really around that idea of delivering outcomes. And actually there's a big move to L&D owning performance and the link and the importance of the link between learning skills and performance. And it's really interesting that actually I'm just going to read this recent stat at the end of 2025, where a survey of HR and L&D professionals saying that only 10% of organisations feel fully confident that their workforce has the current skills to achieve the outcomes and performance that the organisations need in the next 12 to 24 months. So 90% of organisations are not in a position to actually get to where they need to get to in that period. So for us, it feels like it's a very important topic. It highlights an urgent need to think about skills, capability development, competency, but the critical part is about the link to performance and that actually the outcome needs to be there. So that's hopefully at the centre of what we're going to talk about a bit today. Before we start, for those that are online, we'd love to know your thoughts. So if you're able to in the chat, let us know in one word or a couple of words if you need to. What's the biggest skills challenge that you are currently facing inside your organisation? Whilst we let some people put some comments in the chat, it'd be great just to hear from your perspective. It's a big topic, obviously, but if you want to pick a section of the idea of either linking learning and skills together, the focus on outcomes, or more general, that idea that L&D owns performance and the skills needed, it'd be great to hear what you're focusing on in Rotork at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think most organisations are probably finding the same. So I don't for 1 minute think that we've got it right. We're on a journey, and I think you're right. The landscape around learning and development has changed, considerably from my perspective. So, most organisations are looking to grow, looking to, improve, perform better. So therefore, ensuring that people feel connected to what that performance outcome is and they understand the role that they play, for me, is the starting point. We need to think about, most organisations' objectives are future focus. So, you're looking to grow, you're looking to expand, you're looking to, grow revenue, whatever that may be. And if you're going to do that, the challenge is within this kind of changing landscape that we're in, where we've got AI technology coming in, we've got the way that we've done things in a traditional way ever changing. What's got us to where we are today will never get us to where we need to be next. And so actually, how do we bridge that gap? And I'm not sure we, any of us have the right answers, but it's just understanding that if we can link, people's contribution and development to the performance outcomes of where we're trying to get and see that link, then, hopefully, we'll start bridging that gap.
Yeah, and I think the critical part is that needs to move from just the individual. It's not just the individual, it's linking to the team, and it's linking up to the organisation as a whole, right?
Totally. And I think, organisational leaders, executive teams, ultimately they're interested in performance. And, the way that you deliver performance is through the people and through leadership and management capability, and individuals feeling connected to that journey.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Look, we've got some people who have put in some comments in the chat. So you just mentioned management. So I'm going to pick this one. Expectations expanding and the management team's understanding and being equipped as an important area for skills development. We talked actually quite a lot about this earlier, didn't we? It'd be good to... So I think some of the main things that we were talking about was aligned to the idea that management capability needs to be developed to be able to adapt and be able to support change. So you've got to think about your management development piece, and then they need the tools and capability to be able to actually support their teams around that change, to be able to then deliver against the goals, expectations, outcomes, performance, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that's something that you've been
we've been working really, really hard on that. And again, I think, so ultimately, everybody needs to connect at all levels through the organisation. Everybody needs to connect to that strategy, the direction that we're going in, and really understand why we're doing what we're doing. What is it that we're trying to do? And then, that then comes down to leadership and management capability in getting that right down to teams across the organisation, so that people really understand the connect they do with this year's performance objectives, this year's performance outcomes. This is why we're focusing on this. This is why it's important, and how that links back to the organisation's strategy. So having a clear link to the performance, what is it that we need to be doing for the next 12 months around our own performance management, how that connects to the bigger picture, and kind of understanding that is almost the thing that unlocks it.
Yeah.
And that then, because we're moving forward and people need to be doing things in a different way, people need to be doing things in a new way, because we've got, AI technology, we've got transformation, etc. You need to be clear on what you're measuring, and understanding, how do we enable that shift? Earlier we were talking about, kind of the pace of change, managing through the complexity, so these are all things that, people need to be more agile at and get better at. And that's the kind of the overarching challenge, really. It's just that what is it that we need people to do differently more of? Can we articulate that? And we might not be able to adequately articulate some of it with AI transformation, etc. But what is it that we need people to be really, becoming familiar with, more focused on? And, for me, I think leadership, management capability, taking people with us in a clear way is an integral part of that. But also that ability to pivot, change, respond to changing.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we also talked a bit about role modelling at a leadership level that's important to this. And we also talked about executive buy-in, especially for L&D, that's so critical to, expect this particular piece about expectations expanding, change happening, or leadership need to role model what that looks like, the behaviours, and that ultimately needs to flow through. But it's a case of it's not just top down, it's middle out, it's bottom up, and we've got to be able to support the organisation across that. I'm going to try and move on to a few other pieces because there's a number here. There's actually a theme here about technology, I think, AI, agility, resilience, the ability to take on feedback as a learning opportunity. I love that one, feedback as a learning opportunity. Maybe we could focus on that one because that's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, totally.
One we were talking about earlier in terms of the idea that why L&D needs to own performance is because actually part of where development happens, or capability or skill development happens, is actually in that performance conversation. You're obviously running a process that's aligned to that. It'd be good if you're happy to share a little bit about.
Yeah, totally. So, our performance management process is essential. And having clarity around that process and when we do it and how we do it has really helped our organisation. But at the heart of our performance management process is two things. We're measuring two things. We're measuring performance outcomes, so what's gone in the past, but we're also assessing behaviours, and we've introduced a behaviour framework across our organisation that applies to every single person in the whole organisation. So we have 6 behaviours, and we talk about those 6 behaviours at every level, in every role, in every performance conversation. So the behaviour framework in itself, and that incorporates regular feedback, developing ourselves and others, sort of those sorts of things that we would expect great managers and leaders to do. But also driving accountability, because actually, we also want people to be able to access learning and be interested in developing themselves, irrespective of whether they want to kind of like have a career path or not. So linking performance to the what, the performance management process, the what to the strategy, global outcomes, the things that the organisation is focusing on and why, and understanding, what we all need, whatever team we need to be working on to achieve that strategy. But the how bit then becomes the conversation. So the development piece around behaviours, and what is great about what's working for us is that from the top down, it doesn't matter. Everybody, even to workers on our shop floor, we're all using the same language around the 6 behaviours.
And feedback's one of those ones in the centre.
And feedback, it sits and, I get regular feedback, I ask for feedback, I give feedback, I receive feedback, real basics there.
It's so critical. And I think in the development cycle between manager and employee, if that performance conversation has that expectation set that there is going to be feedback as part of it, and then obviously I know that from your perspective you're setting development activities to then face forward as well. It's not just looking back from a performance perspective, you're looking at that loop to say, then how do we put learning and skills into that to develop the individual? Come back round to your performance conversation. It keeps going round. So I'll keep going. There's a couple of other ones that would be good. I think I've got one here. You've talked there about connecting what needs to be delivered. I'm interested in your thoughts on how this links to the purpose and the why. How far, in your view, does understanding of purpose energize, motivate people to do what needs doing to deliver those desired performance outcomes? So we're talking about engagement, and we just literally were talking about this, weren't we, earlier as well?
Yeah.
Do you want to share your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we all. For me, I think a great level, wherever we sit in the organisation, and when we talk about people manager development and leadership development, I always think about myself. I put myself in it. I think when we ask people what they want, and the research shows us that, people want to be developed and they want to learn and grow, but they also want clarity and they want to, feel recognised, supported, but they also want kind of that purpose, that link. So understanding that is really important. So having employee engagement, I mean, we have got employee engagement, and really it's a great measure because engaged employees in organisations do outperform those that don't have great engagement. And the one thing that really raises the bar in engagement is regular one-to-one conversations with people. So actually, it isn't rocket science. Even it's sometimes easy. Actually, if as a people manager or as a leader, you are regularly connecting on a one-to-one basis or having a conversation where you're discussing performance and you're having an opportunity to coach, give feedback, receive feedback, that has a huge impact on engagement. And leaders that do that brilliantly and people managers and teams that do it brilliantly ultimately then have an impact on your engagement results, which then should completely correlate to your performance. Organisations that have good engagement, have longevity with people, they don't leave, they stay, they're committed to the organisation, they're enthusiastic about the organisation. Mm-hmm. So all of those things kind of fall out of it. Yeah. So, I do believe passionately that employee engagement is a good measure. And our leaders and our managers and our teams that have engaged teams are role modelling brilliant behaviours that encourage more performance outcomes.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we did discuss as well, which is interesting, how I think it probably sounds like a lot of us are all thinking about the same things. I feel passionately that learning and development owns performance because the development conversation, the feedback conversation, identifies gaps and potential to be able to then build capability through skills development, learning, etc. I've also got this belief that learning development should know employee listening, that engagement piece too, and understand, because like we talked about earlier, the performance conversation hopefully aligns the strategic why, the what you're trying to go after, the alignment of global objectives, the alignment of the strategic imperative and where that employee fits into it. So you've got that kind of connective tissue. The listening and the engagement piece is really interesting, because you've then got things like, well, engagement score maybe holistically, but you've got potentially some insight on motivation, energy, happiness, other things that we know contribute to the potential for high performance. And that's the key bit that you were talking about earlier, is the potential. It's the forward-facing element about.
Forward-facing, totally. Yeah,
And I think, like, obviously all of the statistics, all of the research suggests that a highly engaged, happy, motivated individual helps move performance forwards, right? And we've seen that. And so I think it's a really interesting one. We've got time for one more question, I think. Let's have a look in here. Okay, this is interesting. There's a significant skills shortage across the construction sector.
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to recruiting highly skilled maintenance technicians. I don't know whether you see any similarities in manufacturing too. Is should we approach this from the perspective of what you've put a big focus on at Rotork, which is around thinking about that gap or capability in a slightly different way? Because often the focus is buy-in skills.
Yeah.
And I think you're trying to move that concept.
Yeah, I know, and there are lots of skill shortages, and obviously as an engineering business as well, often we're always looking to recruit lots of graduate engineers, etc. And it's a really crowded marketplace, and a few kind of opportunities for people. So we're always thinking, and there may be other skills that we need. So the challenge is there. In terms of, thinking about the skills, so one of the things that we're really keen to do is ensure that we grow our own talent internally, because sometimes at the moment, often in a changing, transforming organisation where the pace is getting faster, actually sometimes we have to buy in expertise or go to the market to bring that skill set in, because we conscious that we don't have it. What we're really trying to do is reverse that model, so that actually we do grow our own, and if we have great engagement and we have people that have transferable skills, thinking laterally across the organisation, somebody in a skill set in a particular function, be it project management skills or change management skills or brilliant people management skills, actually, being able to support them to develop, across the organisation and into other roles, etc. So, a big measure for us is trying to grow more internally. And because we're all after the same talent often, just enabling people to feel connected and that there is the opportunity for them to grow and develop. Most of us do. If we all want to be developed in our role, the one thing that people want is development, and certainly with our early careers talent across the business, people want to feel that there is an opportunity to learn and grow. So,
and I think there's something in that there's a shift in the look. Absolutely, there's skill shortages, and I'm not trying to belittle the fact that there's definitely some gaps in some skill sets and capabilities, and maybe there is a technical shortage. But there's got to be a bit of a shift in paradigm around that kind of idea of building within, and there's a business case in there too, right? Because bringing someone in has risk associated with it. There's obviously a ramp period of up to 6 months, let's say, to get to a level of proficiency. That investment of time there in an individual that's already in the organisation makes a pretty compelling ROI case. So I think there's some interesting ways to think about that, and conceptually, for especially the executive and leadership, to say, actually, when you start to look at the costs of bringing people in and the associated risk and ramp versus developing and the investment in skills, capability development, etc.
Yeah,
that's an interesting perspective. Right, we've got there's more questions. There's a load more that I've missed, so I'm sorry about that. It's hard to get through everything. We want to get onto the main kind of topic and the questions that were asked in relation to that topic. And obviously that's in relation to the kind of idea of linking learning skills and performance together. So we've got a few pages of questions here. I'll try and get into a few of them, and we'll try to move through as many as we can in the time that we've got left. This one's, I guess, is a bit linked to one of the questions that came up earlier around management leadership, but I really like it. I think it's relevant for us to carry on talking about. Leadership, accountability and ability, and in brackets it says reluctance to manage the performance of their teams, both proactively and when there are problems. I think it's more of a statement probably, but it's something that I think exists in a number of organisations.
Yeah.
I think you've said you've experienced, I mean, I think everyone's experienced pockets of it probably in their organisations, if it's not the organisation as a whole.
Yeah, and I think, we're currently running a huge people manager programme across the business. And this has been at the heart of it, really, in terms of, accountability, managing performance, having those conversations. And unless people are supported and given really simple tools to be able to have that conversation, then they're reluctant to do it because it's hard. And, you don't know, often managers learn the most when they first become people managers because suddenly they're having to have all these conversations and it's like, oh my goodness, this is really tough. So, our behaviour framework has given us almost like the golden thread around expectations, accountability, so a behaviour around being accountable, which comes down to everybody in the organisation at whatever level you're in. So, we're all accountable to performing the job that we're employed to do. Yeah. So then having a clear, almost like a framework that enables you to articulate what those behaviours mean around taking accountability. So sometimes a typical performance challenge can be people don't deliver what they say they're going to deliver. So actually, strip that down. What are the behaviours? Somebody says they're going to do something and they didn't do it. So on the behaviour framework, it really clearly says, takes accountability to delivering what they say they're going to do. So suddenly I can have a conversation with you, kind of saying, look, Harry, we had this conversation. You told me that you'd keep me updated. You said that it was all on track, and now we've not delivered and we've missed the milestone. But it's about the behaviour. So having a framework of behaviours helps people articulate it. And if you were more senior, I might be able to articulate it in a different way. But actually, at the end of the day, it's, have you done what you said you're going to do? And you haven't, And actually, this is a behaviour that is really important to us in this organisation. And we should all be taking our own accountability. So suddenly you've got the conversation, and there could be a million different reasons as to why you didn't.
Yeah.
It could be that I didn't give you enough information. Fair enough. We're having the conversation and I'm sorry. Or it could be that, you don't know how to do it. So there's a bit of development and I need to coach you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So having the behaviours that are really important for everybody around your key things help people, but they also help individuals themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it because I think it gives you a reference point to be able to form the constructive conversation. It allows you to go back to something that everyone has awareness of and is able to then reference. What's really interesting to me, and I could be completely off here, and this is going to it'd be good to hear from you and anyone else in the chat in relation to this. That leadership, accountability and reluctance to actually manage performance conversations, that for me says there's something potentially culturally wrong inside that organisation, and that there needs to be something that probably is reset around that. And there needs to be a developmental conversation with individuals around how it's important. Like, everyone likes delivering good news. Like, that's the easy side of being a leader and the easy side of being a manager. But actually it's in that process of feeling slightly uncomfortable where actually change and development really happens. And that's not about giving negative or disparaging feedback. That's about working out how to give constructive and relevant feedback. And I think it's a skill. It's something that you have to develop, isn't it?
Totally.
And it needs to be that you have all the things like psychological safety and the foundations and stuff in place, trust between leadership and team members. So performance improvement doesn't happen without some of those foundational elements happening. We talked about it earlier, culturally, leadership, role modeling, all that side of stuff. You've got to it's not one or another, it's really all of the above needs to be in place, it feels like.
Totally. And one of the foundations of an organization is around the culture, the talent and the people, because without the culture and the talent and the people, how do you deliver what it is you're trying to deliver? You can't deliver performance without it. So that link is absolutely integral. And understanding and being able to articulate, and particularly from your senior teams, from your leadership and your real senior teams across the organisation, that actually our culture is around these leadership behaviours and our models, etc. That actually, if we're going to succeed in this organisation, we have done a lot of work from 2023 to 2024 to actually thinking about our future culture. So that reset, I think, is important. And actually everything where we've got to since then has been on the reset and engaging the business in that culture. So it's not just being driven from the top. You have to have focus groups, you have to test and learn, you have to provide the feedback, you have to tell people why we're doing this and why it's important.
And it's continuously, right?
Continuous, yeah. So, not being done so that it's not like an L&D thing and, it's, like we think this should happen. Actually, it's within the context of why we need it in the business and we all connect to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I feel strongly that leadership, that in this example, if this is happening in an organisation, there needs to be a challenge around, are these really developed leaders and they need some support to be able to get there, but then they might push against culture, psychological safety. You need to go and do a bit of a deep dive into why it's not happening and probably uncover those points. Should we keep moving? Because otherwise we could probably carry on that one for a long time. This one's really interesting in the context of linking learning, skills development and performance together. There's often a gap between what L&D get asked to measure, engagement, completion, satisfaction scores, and what the business, getting emotional about it, actually needs to know is performance improving.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. It's definitely a challenge, right? I think it's hard. But I do think this is the fundamental shift that's being asked of L&D now. And I think that's the critical part, is that you have to link it to individual team and business performance. You've got to go beyond completion metrics. You've got to go beyond the kind of standard reporting. It's got to come back to the strategy. That's what we were talking about earlier. Yeah,
totally. And, what is it that you're looking to measure, being really focused on the metrics that give you the shift. For example, you could be running, a high potential program. And, so you've got high potentials going through a development program, being clear at the onset that, what's the measure we've got at the moment? How many of our high potentials stay with the organisation? How many of them get promoted within 2-3 years, etc.? So actually measuring that, what's the gender balance as well, and being focused. We've got a cohort of people, so let's at the start of a 2-year development program, let's just keep measuring how many have been promoted, how many have kind of it's just being really clear about what it is you're trying to measure. Yeah.
And I think we also talked about the fact, as the example you gave about promoting from within, there is actually also a way for, if you've got a particularly engaged, hopefully executive, a CFO might want a pound amount against, let's say, the number of internal hires that you've made versus external hires. And there are ways to start to link pound amounts to some of these activities, which I think is going to be asked even more of L&D going forward, just to be able to say, prove the investment, that this is a case of, and it's not always easy. So retention and other things have many different factors, but let's say we've put a new management development program in place. We've done a number of activities around that piece.
So employee engagement should go up. The quality of performance management should go up.
Yeah.
Internal promotion should go up. Yeah. And if you think about other measures, so potentially, customers are critical to our business. So customer feedback, customer NPS, or whatever measure it is that you're using. So you invest in your customer service teams and you upskill them and you develop their capability, then actually we should be able to measure the results on how quickly we're getting more business, how our NPS score is doing. So it's just about, picking the things that will give you the data that indicates that you're making a difference, the ROI is worth it. Yeah. Certainly from our people manager perspective, we know our engagement results have gone up. We know the quality of our performance conversations have gone up. Yeah, so that is a good measure. It still could be better. It won't be perfect. How do we maintain that? Yeah. What's the next thing? But the clarity comes from what's the business need. Yeah.
And something that you said earlier before we started, which was it was actually really lovely to hear you say it about your CEO being incredibly engaged and being a role model and believing in the value of L&D. And I don't think everyone in the L&D space necessarily has that.
Yeah.
But what that does give you access to is what's important and where the focus needs to be and the strategic imperatives.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, it is a privilege. I am privileged to work in an organisation that has got such a fantastic exec team and CEO, because they do make that link, and constantly holding everybody in their teams to account around leadership behaviours and the importance of development.
Yeah, I think that it is a difficult one to kind of. I think I feel like it starts with that relationship with the executive to be able to get that alignment, understanding of what really matters, to then start to measure what matters.
Yeah.
Because if you, and I think we talked very briefly about it earlier, if you're in a situation where you don't have that engagement, well, the first thing is to go and knock on the door and try and get it, right?
Totally.
But if you can't, we were saying, go and pull the strategy documents, go and speak to maybe a layer down and ask what's really important, like from their perspective, strategically.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously working in the private sector, in a FTSE business, we have an annual report and accounts. Actually, if you're a leader or a manager in a business, look at your annual report and accounts, because that has everything in that where the business is focusing on. So if you've not got that direct line, actually that's the critical bit, because that is what the organisation is focusing on. And then have the conversations internally about, I understand this, so what does that mean for us? Yeah. But it's hard. I've been there. I've worked in organisations where you don't have that, and I understand. Yeah,
I've had a conversation with someone recently about it, and you've got kind of two paths. Is you try and change and try and make that change, and you try and build it from within. And actually, what you can do is you can build a portfolio of experience and impact that, if they're not going to buy in and they're not going to keep supporting you, you can go and take away and say, this is what I've done.
Yeah,
and that's actually okay too. But it is a difficult one. I think you need that executive buy-in and that support. Otherwise, you're struggling. We'll keep going. Next question. We've kind of talked about that one. This one's about managing change and performance, and the idea of demoralising staff, resistance to change, slow progress, and also maybe a case of change fatigue. It's a bit more of a statement than a question, but it's something that I think probably we're all aware of and have heard about. Right?
Oh goodness, yeah. I mean, actually, I think the pace of change, we keep saying, the pace of change is getting faster and faster, and it is, and it's relentless. It does feel relentless, in terms of transformation, what's happening in the world, changing markets, everything with AI technology, transforming organisational structures. God, it is never ending, and it's getting faster and faster. So I think we all feel fatigued. So it is a lot around that resilience, but I do think there is something about the pace and delivering performance within pace, and sometimes with ambiguity, and not having everything perfect. And sometimes I think in L&D, particularly if I think about creating e-learning content, for example, sometimes you get people working on a project and, and you kind of, but sometimes 80% is good enough. Keep the message simple, just keep it because we all, sometimes if we're working on something, we all go for that perfection piece. And actually, sometimes because it's already out of date, it's already changed, and too many people having a voice on, I don't like that question, I think that, and you kind of give feedback and you get feedback, and sometimes you just have to you can't make everything perfect for everybody. It's a bit like hospital food. I always think of it, like when people are delivered, people really moan about it, and you're never going to please it. It's just what it is, so don't beat yourself up around the perfection piece. What is it you're trying to achieve to deliver, and get it over the line? Because something, even if it's not perfection, is better than nothing.
Yeah. And I think you've got to start with knowing what that something is, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise it can be challenging.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I also think there's something for us to be aware of and okay with, is that not everyone's going to be able to go on that journey, right? And that's okay to say it. And that's something that is a mature adult conversation to have in an organisation, an L&D team. You can put as much as you can put as much activity that's focused on the outcome in front of people to be able to work on, but some people might not want to go on that journey, right?
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
And that's okay. And I think that,
of course, it's okay. Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely the pace of change, and I think change management for me is for me in terms of skill capability, which has all the things around growth mindset, ability to adapt, change, all that side of things is so
resilience.
Resilience, yeah, that's absolutely critical.
So that then links into well-being, and actually, we also need, because sometimes it's the people that get more on their plate because they do, and they show all these behaviours and they're enthusiastic, but then it's actually like
they're burning out.
You're burning out your good people. So there's a kind of cautionary tale in there as well, I think, isn't there?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Right, should we keep going? Let's see. Turning the page. Oh yeah. This one's interesting, and again, it's more of a statement. With people management skills, the impact is that we risk losing talent or spending too long on HR issues which should never arise in the first place. I think that's probably an interesting concept where people are, that sounds like in this example, there are issues that are happening because there's a lack of capability, because of people's capability. So there's HR issues that are arising, or people are leaving an organisation. I think that probably goes back to some of the concepts that we've talked about.
I think sometimes it's when you're a people manager, it's okay not to have all the answers, and actually it's more about the conversation. So let's have the conversation, and you need to equip people to be able to be comfortable to have the conversation and give them some tools to help with that. But a lot of managers are sometimes their background is very black and white, and it's a process, or it's black and white and you do this and that's right and wrong. Actually, management isn't like that. Management is messy. It's all about the conversation. And I think sometimes people are reluctant to have conversations because they feel ill-equipped in case somebody says, like, I've got a personal problem going on at home, or, and actually it's about the conversation. We are human. Everybody is, we're empathetic, we understand, one of the big things that's come out of our People Manager programme, and I've worked in leadership and management programmes all of my career, and every time, everybody always says, actually, we're all facing very similar issues, and we are. When you're a people manager, a leader, there is no new issue, and it's often about avoiding a conversation, and it's okay not to have the answer. You don't have to tell people what to do and have the answers. And sometimes it's okay to say, I need to think about that. Thanks for sharing that with me. And that's the human, the conversational bit. And it's questioning, it's listening, it's observing.
Yeah. I think also it's the idea of trying to help people find the opportunity for them to understand and move forward themselves. You don't actually necessarily have to have the answer, and they might find the answer themselves. But if you can facilitate
coaching.
that, you can facilitate that conversation through coaching. Exactly.
Totally.
The grow model is a nice kind of structure.
A grow model is fabulous, and just try it, and everybody knows it. It's a bit like SMART objectives as well. We know all these acronyms, and everybody goes, "Yes, I know what that means," but actually, how many actually use
Go
it?
into the
How
conversation
many
thinking
people
about
do
it.
it? And practice. You can use the grow model every day, even just walking, to the sandwich shop with a colleague at lunchtime. Just try the grow model. It's amazing. It's the simple things, and it's. And actually, somebody recently was on the receiving end of the grow model, and they went, "God, that was really thorough. It was really helpful." And it's like all you've done is given somebody the opportunity to think, and articulate it.
And it is. It's a really accessible one. It's a nice one to be able to move forward. There's a few things that have come up in the chat. I think there's some things that I probably missed, so sorry if I have. This one's interesting. I actually just recently read this same report, I think, from the World Economic Forum at the moment, is talking about skills for the future, the change, and change is the main certainty moving forward. Skill and technology and skill and leadership are some of the main focuses. How far are you building consideration of this into your strategy at Rotork? It sounds like, obviously, I know you've got your people development, you're doing leadership development too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Technology specifically, is there something that's...
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're like most kind of organisations, working with AI and that is going to be a game changer. It's certainly a game changer for the space of HR, I think, personally. So just unlocking some of the heavy lifting with Excel spreadsheets and things like that, just, kind of game changes. So that's kind of really exciting. But then there's the capability and the organisation accessibility to these tools, So, we're all kind of, we're either kind of starting to use it ourselves, or we have no idea, or our organisation has no strategy for it. So, with AI transformation and technology transformation, just having proof of concept ideas, testing, test and learn approaches where you think about one of the things that we are doing at the moment, as you know, is using your system. We're using a skills-based assessment for a particular function to be able, but that is helping us kind of really reassess what it is that we're trying to do. And your AI capability is helping us do that, but it's in a different way. So, sorry, I'm not sure if I've answered the question, because I've probably gone down a rabbit hole on that.
It was more about skill and technology and skill and leadership. I think we talked a lot about leadership being a focus of your strategy. I think there's another part. This actually is another part to it. It's linked to what we were talking about earlier. The expectation on line managers is really interesting, it's so much, and actually not all organisations are providing them with the necessary skills. The statement here, I think you said this earlier, similar. HR is rarely black and white, but unless we provide people management skills before promoting them, our HR teams will always have to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, no, and actually that's just triggered me in terms of, technology and where kind of AI and technology is helping us. Because actually, if you've got a framework, any of us in an organisation, want to be able to access the information that we need as quickly as possible. So AI is helping us do that. So from an HR perspective, or from a learning and development perspective in particular, if we're trying to drive accountability and ownership for someone's own learning and development, enabling them to access technology that will take them, and if it's even personalised and linked to their role, and there's so I go in and I'm working in L&D and I've got my framework and my, if I want to progress my career in L&D, the next level of skills looks like this, and I'm currently here, and that's great. but equally, anybody across the organisation, I'm interested in developing some skills in X, or I don't know why, just enabling that so that people can access it. If everybody's interested in learning and development, which we know they are, give them the simple accessibility to access it, and not get bogged down in the process and the procedure. It's like unlocking the door. How can we just make it easy for people to go find? Because often in HR in particular, we get kind of dragged into the process and and you didn't do this, and you kind of almost like the policing of the process. Whereas actually AI and technology is enabling us all to be able to access the process really quickly. So, actually then that builds ownership and accountability. And it's not about having to train people, support them in learning how to do that thing, because actually you can go find that easy. That's what's the shift that I think
we're living in at the moment.
We're living in. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. I think there's a couple of bits probably just a flag, and I think this is the interesting thing around the difference between L&D and HR, maybe in performance context. We talked about this a little bit earlier. L&D owning feels like it's more about the development of individuals, the forward-facing performance piece, versus HR. It is more of the structure, the process, the when it goes wrong kind of thinking. How do we deal with a problem? And there's something interesting about the way that relationship works at the moment, and feels like that's disconnected rather than being a connected experience.
Totally.
And probably if you invest in the development and get that forward-facing performance piece right, the other part probably becomes less of a hassle and a burden and an issue. I want to just flag something because I'm very passionate about it, is this idea of managers being underdeveloped, potentially thrown into contexts that they're not ready for, etc. There's a really good book called Power to the Middle that I think I talk about all the time, but it's a really good one. It's a load of McKinsey consultants who used to just go into organisations and say, let's get rid of the middle management because they don't matter. They've realised, no, they're such a critical part.
Yeah.
These are all the elements. It's worth a read. I'd really recommend it. The reality of organisations moving forward, though, I think we probably ought to try and find space for at least one more question. I've got one here. This is interesting. And I think this is a big challenge for us as a software provider, but just generally, is the difference between desk-based workers and frontline workers.
Yeah.
Someone who's not necessarily always sat at a computer.
Yeah.
Learning out to site-based workers, making sure that everyone has the opportunity to learn and develop, so it's an equitable experience, no matter what their role. I imagine, obviously, you've got quite a lot of people working in lots of different locations around the world in different situations.
So our kind of our shop floor operatives, sort of doing the building of, our actuators, etc. So obviously in a manufacturing site, etc. They don't have digital access to our Learn platform at the moment, and actually the skills that our people managers and team leaders need is different, because my experience is they're very good at having those those safety briefings, those meetings that they need around production quality, kind of moving people around and skills capability, and making sure people are trained to the level that they need to do. But it is very different to like you say, to digital users sitting in different functions across the business. So we really believe passionately that all of our people managers from the shop floor have exactly the same people management skills, but actually they need other things as well. So because they don't get a chance to have regular one-to-ones with people, and actually kind of what they need is just slightly different. So how can we work with them as a specific group to give them the skills and the capability and the support they need, because they often are talking to groups rather than one-to-ones.
Yeah.
But equally, we still would want and expect those people to feel that they are being developed and supported, and there could be some brilliant talent in that community as well. So we don't want to lose that. Yeah.
And from a systems perspective, they've still got access to everything that other desk-based learners, or do you break it up by groups?
The people managers and the team leaders kind of on the shop floor have access to everything, but actually some of our operatives that might be working shifts, might work in the evening, etc., they currently don't. So we see them as we understand that what we need to support them with is slightly different.
Yeah, and I think that's similar, and it is definitely a challenge around that. And I think accessibility is a big one.
Yeah,
something for us as a software partner, we need to make sure that we're thinking about the different modalities and engagement processes to support that. I think so. It's definitely one for us. I think we might have a chance to go into another question if we can. One individual here says that we're seeing organizations can identify skill gaps but really struggle to show how closing them connects to the business outcomes the leaders care about. Something that hopefully we're trying to solve in terms of what we do in our software, but it'd be interesting to hear what your kind of thoughts are in relation to whether that's something that you've seen, or whether you think there's something very specific that you can give as an example or way to help support.
I mean, obviously commercial skills and, financial skills and just, business acumen, is something that, for leaders across the business, and obviously the more senior they become, to be able to demonstrate that and understand that, and that links back to ROI, doesn't it? It's those commercial acumen, kind of understanding as a private business, what that means, and obviously that will differ for kind of in public sector organisations, but just that financial capability, commercial, kind of sales skills, etc. Those are things that are critically important to us if we're going to grow. Yeah.
And one of the things that we talk about in relation to skills is, and you said about this, before AI, it probably took 3 months to create a framework, a capability, competency, skills framework, whatever you want to call it. But one of the big things now is that you can do that reasonably quickly. But what we always suggest in terms of practice around actually rolling this out is that you start, and I think you just talked about this earlier a bit, is you start with a cohort, a team, a department. You don't necessarily have to try and boil the ocean with this, and get some proof points, get some metrics. And the sales team is actually a really good place to start, because there's a correlation between, there's a line that you can draw that's much clearer between capability development around the sales profession and a revenue number. And so you can start to link those things together.
And service, customer.
Customer support, service, those types of things. So I guess we've talked a lot about the idea of linking learning, performance, skills development together. And obviously one of the big topics that's come in is change. I think management's come into it, and leadership and role modeling, engagement's come up too. If you were to give any advice of where to start, or some area that you think people would like to be left with, is there something that you'd like to share before we have to close up our time on this session together?
I think connecting to the overall purpose and strategy of your organisation is critical, and just getting that leverage in at a senior level. I think having the conversation with the key leaders in the business. What are the metrics they're interested in? What are they focusing on? What would make a difference in their world? And actually, those conversations, just like knock on the door, go in, have it, because then even if you're not getting that direction from the top down, you are actually, like you were saying, kind of proving and making demonstrable impact that is giving you the confidence that you're doing the right thing. Just try to avoid doing something because somebody's told you. It is that it's almost like being an internal consultant, isn't it? What is it that we're trying to achieve here, and understand that. and get that feedback.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for spending the time, and I hope that everyone online has enjoyed hearing and thinking about the topic, and hopefully we sparked some areas of interest, and likewise maybe close some gaps in thinking, or sparked areas to help close gaps. But we'll say a huge thank you to you, and a big thank you to everyone who's joined us online or in the recording. We'll close up the session for today. Thank you very much.
Can I have a cup of coffee now?
Yeah, a cup of coffee.
Thank you.